Hi, and welcome everyone to my Venus series. Down below there will be a link to my book, of course, and as well as skipping towards the actual sign that I'm going to be talking about if you don't want to listen to this beginning segment, which I am going to go in a little bit deeper than what I think a lot of astrologers out there on YouTube are going to be tapping into. There's going to be a little bit more counseling based interwoven in the beginning section of what Venus is, as well as how can we kind of redefine the culture in at least the Western world. I don't know about anywhere else, as it is kind of blah, and I think we need a little bit of a cultural change. What are our belief systems when it comes to dating and getting somebody to fall in love with us, because you can't actually get someone to fall in love with you or anything like that necessarily. So depending on who you, the viewer, are, because I don't actually know who you are and what you struggle with, I'm going to tap in a little bit with a little bit more counseling in there, since I do have a master's in mental health counseling and I love relationships, as I am a Libra rising, Libra South Node in the first house. So this is my book. You can get it on Amazon. The link will be down below. It's also in the description box in my channel description page. It is like a personal story. You can learn a lot about it, or learn something about it from reading. Of course, you're going to learn about it if you read it. But if you like relationships, learning from heartbreak, learning from different encounters, how we deal with one another, because that is all Venusian, Venus energy is relationships, self-value, self-worth, and money. What do we attract? And so if you read that book, it's not going to solve your problems or anything like that, but you might feel heard. There might be something in there that may relate to you or someone that you feel close to, as well as kind of learning how to empathize and be more compassionate of other people as well as yourself, because if you want the world to be a better place, then you have to understand that nobody is exactly like you, and that's a good thing, because otherwise the world would be really boring, and each individual brings their own authentic, creative, cool, weird person, whatever, to the mix, so we all can learn and grow. Some other books, because I'm just going to be this type of person, even though I'm not the writer of these books. But if you haven't already heard of or read these books before, these can be things that you can learn from if you're struggling in relationships, or just, you're on a self-help journey, self-improvement journey, self-awareness journey. If you've just kind of started and astrology was just appealing to you, that is one way of doing it. These are other books that I just grabbed off of my bookshelf, and so if you haven't heard of the 5 love languages, it's very popular. If you haven't read it already, I think there is a part 2. Reading this, getting the examples of what the writer, Gary Chapman, I'm always bad with names, basically, we have 5 love languages. You can say in astrology, the Venus signs in the 12 zodiac signs are 12 zodiac love languages. It's just a little bit different in how we kind of interpret it, or another level of stuff. So words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, physical touch, and everyone has, their kind of go-to with that. If you haven't read that, this one I haven't read in a long time, so it's, it's a very short read, but why Why Am I Afraid to Tell You Who I Am by John Powell. I have to do it like this. But if that is interesting to you, I'm going to try and link them down below so it's easy access. So yeah, but that's a good, very fast, easy read. I've read it one time. It probably was common sense to me, so I don't remember it as much. This was one of the first books I was suggested from somebody during my terrible relationship, which is in here. The biggest lesson of my entire life was that relationship that really woke me up to what the hell I was doing also. Even though I wasn't doing anything necessarily bad or wrong, I was self-defeating in an unconscious sense, and so realizing, maybe you'll figure this out during the bubble time of your first Saturn return, which that was happening to me, as well as the Pluto and Capricorn transit, which I have a stellium in Capricorn in my 4th house. It's a very emotional house of emotions and family trauma. The foundations of childhood is in the 4th house. So it made me really unravel, and all this stuff kind of brought up to the surface. So maybe, in a creative way of how I wrote the book through stories, maybe you can come up, or certain things will light up in your head, if you read it. Someone had suggested this book to me, Get Out of Your Own Way, which for me, it made me realize 70% of this book was my partner at the time, not necessarily me. And it was making me very angry and got me in my critical Virgo in 12th house mode of criticizing and trying to get somebody else to fit what I wanted, which you can't do. You can't do it. You can't force anyone who's not ready to fit in your mold. You can't do it, even though you have an ideal picture of we're going to be the perfect couple, or we get along so well, or it just flows, but there's so much more to relationships than it just kind of just going with the flow and expecting it to work out in the long run. You can be attracted to each other in the beginning. It can be fun. You can busy yourself with all the entertainment stuff, which is, the dating, the Leo 5th house stuff. But at some point, someone, needs to be able to speak up and talk about some serious stuff, or be able to do that in the first place, early on. And that takes a lot of self-worth, self-knowing. Do you even know who in the world are you? Who are you? What you like, what you don't like, what can you tolerate, what can you not tolerate, what are deal breakers? Even if the person looks the way that you're attracted to, or has the perfect resume, has a job that is very secure, and they can take care of themselves, or they can take care of themselves and you, and you're like, oh, I need to be with this person. I'm going to morph myself in order to fit the mold of the person that I like, even though that is not authentic to myself. Later on down the road, if you are not authentic to yourself and what you truly wanted, even though you were disillusioned in the beginning by the romance and the entertainment and what could be, you might end up feeling kind of sad and lonely, or this is not what I want. And then, you run into problems, or things get more complicated after you already get married or you have kids, and it's a lot harder, So changing the culture of, how we approach relationships and making that more of a popular norm. That's the cool thing to do. That is just what people they tend to do that now, instead of the old way, swiping 1 million times on a dating app and kind of looking down the resume list and their little picture and saying, no, yes, so quickly, and overriding so many other things, can really make you miss out on really good relationships. Or not even trying. And then we all become more separate and more alone and more victim mentality and blah, blah, blah. So I wrote down, a bunch of stuff about what Venus kind of rules, because I tend to kind of go all over the place. Usually in past videos, I do that, or I blank out because I have Chiron and Gemini, and I'm always a work in progress with my Chiron and Saturn. And I have a playlist down below on my channel. If you click my name down below, you'll see a list of videos, shorts, playlists, lives, blah, blah, blah. And you can click on playlists, and it's whatever I have put up so far is organized there if you want to check out other videos to help you. Otherwise, why am I doing this? I'll just help myself. I'm not going to help you. I don't know who you are, but I love doing this. I do it anyway at work, with my coworkers. They come to me for advice all the time, or I notice things about them that they need to work on, and sometimes they're not always ready or completely aware to work on their things, and that's fine. I see them all as my little children, even though a lot of them are older than me, or some people, I don't know, whatever. So basically, Venus rules charm and magnetism, just kind of what naturally kind of gravitates towards you, as well as what you may be giving off to other people. Remember that Venus, if you're new to astrology, Venus rules 2 zodiac signs. It is the ruler of Taurus, which mainly rules our self-worth, our self-value, and our personal finances, as well as Venus rules Libra. Libra is the relationship house. It rules other people, because you're not thinking about yourself anymore when you're in a relationship. You're kind of thinking about yourself too, but if you want a relationship that is harmonious, you do have to consider the other person. Otherwise, why are you in a relationship with another person? Just be in a relationship with yourself, So in order to create a harmonious relationship, I forgot what I'm talking about. See, this happens to me all the time. In order to create a harmonious relationship, you have to be what Libra stuff, diplomatic, kind of know when to kind of back off and not be so assertive. Sometimes there's someone who is going to get their way, and there's going to be someone who might not get their way as much at times, but hopefully it's to a point where it's not a deal breaker, or it's not damaging their relationship or hurting one another. It's just sometimes, things are going to favor someone else. Like if one partner loves football and the other person hates football, and they love going to the museum and vice versa, they're going to share in, I don't know if they will share, but hopefully you're going to kind of compromise and say, like, I know that you love football, even though I don't really care about football, and I will go, to the games or whatever because you love it. But I would appreciate it if you didn't have football playing 24 hours a day. Like sometimes I want to watch my shows too, if you're able to take a break, or whatever the two parties, or multiple. Some people are polyamorous, or do very unconventional things. If you're able to be upfront, honest, and vulnerable with what you actually want and what are you willing to work with, it might be hard because you're gonna be weeding out a lot of people who don't fit that box, but if you know for certain this is what you like and don't like, who you are, and you've kind of gone through a lot of tests already or relationships to figure that out, or give it a try at least, then you won't know. I think I always forget what. Venus also rules our aesthetic taste. What is our style, interest in art, beauty, personal aesthetics of a person. Like Venus in Aries is going to most likely like someone who they have an attractive body that kind of looks sporty, for an example. Venus also rules our romantic desire, or the kind of partners we tend to gravitate to. Venus is pleasure. Taurus is all about pleasure seeking. Food is pleasurable. Anyone out there with binge eating disorder or go to food for comfort. I know I am one person in there. You'll read that a little bit in the book. It's very diverse, from a ballet background. Touch, feeling, leisure activities, sensual delights, the senses. Smell. Does the person always wear cologne, or does that turn you off? Or, all kinds of stuff. Physical touch. Some people like, a little bit chubby kind of person because it's, they're more huggable. And some people aesthetically, maybe the more super toned and maybe bony-ish people, maybe that's how they find themselves attractive, but maybe a partner will be like, it's too masculine for me, like on a female, or she doesn't look healthy, whatever. The eye, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It is our social grace. This is very like Libra, you have to be kind of charming and pleasant, and the tone of voice that you use or the way that you say things, it's not like super mean or critical or angry. It's kind of like icky to the kind of Venus energy. How are we diplomatic with other people and respectful? Think hospitality stuff like hotels, restaurants. These are people who, even if they do not like the way the customer or the person is approaching them and talking to them, or like, why are you yelling at me? I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just a freaking receptionist. I'm the person on the phone, and you're lashing out at me and I didn't even do anything wrong. They still have to have the strength and calm demeanor to be very, try to like ease things down, de-escalate a very unpleasant, energy that is being encountered, and try to calm them down. Like, I'm going to try and solve your problems. It's okay. What is going on? Let me see what I can do for you. Okay. That is very Taurus, Libra, Venusian energy, dealing, de-escalating and rebalancing, unpleasant situations. That is Venus. Our Venus is also our affection style, our like physical wants and needs, as well as possibly ourselves, the verbal ways that we express, and how we show love, or how we want love to be received, as well as how we tend to give it. Venus also rules money and resources. That's why Venus is like a very important planet, because it rules kind of a lot of stuff. In order to have nice things or go on nice dates and have, cashmere sweaters and cologne and perfume and cute outfits to look a certain way, or makeup, and be able to afford a haircut and all this stuff, like you usually have to have money, and in our society, we kind of revolve around currency, even though at the end of the day, if money didn't exist, the main things we need to kind of look out for is water, food, shelter, medication, and possibly armory or like self-defense things. If the world is still a crazy cuckoo bird of people who don't know how to live harmoniously with each other, then you're going to need that. or you're going to still need that, or you're going to have to self-defense yourself against a really hungry tiger who wants to eat you instead of a deer or something like that. So yeah. So Venus is also like how we attract money and resources from other people as well as our spending habits, how we tend to spend money on things, or are you an impulse shopper, wants and needs. When I hear from people who are like, oh, I need this. And I'm like, you need that? You definitely do not need a $300 Labubu, okay? You don't need that. You want that. There's a difference. Venus rules our value system. What do you actually value? And when people, get into, I don't think people get into discussions about this, but you can get into a debate about what is actually valuable, what is valuable to you, because that is going to be different for people. So those are things that you have to dig into when you are exploring somebody new, as well as, are they being honest? Do they actually do what they say? Do they actually value what they're saying, or they're just trying to pull one over you, or trying to people please in order for you to like them, and all these things? You have to use a lot of discernment. But what do you value? Because if you don't even know what you value, you're more likely to respond in a way to be like, oh, yeah, I think, I value that, I guess, it's the same. But you might not have thought about it that deeply, or you're just going along with it because it just sounds good. And that is something that you have to really learn how to ask the right questions, because if you don't ask the right questions, you're not going to get the answer, and that might come with, how long have you lived? What kind of experiences have you already gone through to now? Now your value system has changed. And now, after all the crap that you've been through in the past, you are now going to ask certain things earlier on to prevent devaluing yourself, because if you love yourself, why would you keep entertaining someone that makes you feel bad or hurts you, or your alignment on how you spend money or your lifestyle just doesn't align, and no matter what you do or try and tell the person like, hey, whatever you keep doing hurts me, you knew, if you discuss this, you already knew that's how they were before. And if that keeps hurting you, and they don't want to change at all, they love living and spending that way, even if it seems kind of reckless or irresponsible or whatever, you might not be the best match. You're going to keep fighting, or one person is always going to feel hurt, like, oh, you make me feel really, you spin like this and it makes me so stressed. We don't have that. We don't have like millions and millions of dollars to do things like that. And the other person will, well, you might die tomorrow, so I'm going to spend the entire check, in one day, because why not? And money is always going to come back. So your belief systems and philosophies about how money is spent is just different, and so if you know that, no matter how attractive you are, how they make you feel, and the lifestyle they may give to you or whatever, if you're not willing to sacrifice or whatever it is, you're going to end up being hurt. And so why do you keep doing that to yourself if that's not a part of your value system, and if you're holding on to something like that, that says something about yourself as to why are you holding on to someone like that if something negative. I can't explain all the situations out there, and it depends, so why would you keep hurting yourself or putting yourself in a situation that devalues yourself? And if it hurts you, unless maybe you're a little bit too full of it, and you do need to be dropped down a peg. Possibly, maybe it's unrealistic. You have perfectionistic ideals, in other people, and you have to kind of succumb a little bit lower to what your standards are because it's just unrealistic, and you might as well, buy a robot that looks exactly like you or the way you want it to be and programmed exactly the way you want it to. And hopefully that just does it for you, makes it happy. We're probably in a time period where you can do that, at least in the future. But I don't know how authentically happy you're going to be, in the long run, at least. Let's see. Venus also rules our relationship pacing, like how fast, slow, or balanced, it's going to be like a Venus in Aries is going to be so fast. I like you. I hope you like me, and we're going to make it work. And it's like instantaneous. Venus in Capricorn might be like a slow burn, it's a slow growth, slow burn. Do I trust you in order to open up? Do you seem like a stable and secure person who can provide for yourself or provide for the relationship too, or whatever? They're going to play out a little bit differently. Romantic ideals like fairy tale, like Pisces, or very pragmatic, like a Virgo. Artistic expression is Venus. Our magnetism for love and wealth. Our collaborative energy, because Libra is collaboration with another person who is not yourself. How do you do that? Your seduction style, like a Venus in Scorpio is going to be very deep, almost like intrusive, wants to get into your psychological psyche, which, maybe like a Venus in Leo or someone who has a ton of Leo might be like, this is too much. We need to stay on the surface. We don't go to that uncomfortable depths of my childhood trauma, and I just don't want to go there. It is crazy. I want to avoid it. And Venus in Scorpio is like, I want to know everything about you and the skeletons in your closet. And why are you the way that you are? And that can be very uncomfortable to people. Like, whoa, like who invited you to do that to me? Venus in Scorpio people might attract sexual encounters, and they didn't do I have an invisible sign around my neck saying my body is for you? I don't want you to be around, go away, so that is also what are we attracting, or Venus is, I'm using Venus in Scorpio because I have Venus in Scorpio. It may attract mental health disordered people, and you're like, what? God, why do I like these messed up people? And so learning how to discern what kind of messed up people can you handle in a healthy way that doesn't make you go down in a negative spiral. You can read that in my book, through my psychosis experience. So, Venus is also your self-worth, self-love. Do you love yourself? Why would you do that to yourself if you loved yourself? There's a basic question you can ask. It's the cultural influences, because in different cultures, there's certain ways that we may learn to express love and respect. Things that you do and don't do, because that's just part of the culture of what, creates harmony. And so in certain cultures, westernized cultures might need to learn a little bit more from really old, very rich cultures that have been around for a really long time, and try and implement the practices that may work for them. Maybe it'll work for you, maybe not, but something to look into, I guess. That's why international travel has benefits if you're able to branch off into a culture that is really, really not yours, whatever you're willing or able to do. Venus is like our relational wounds, like how we interact with each other, because we don't always have the same Venus. Within your age group, you're probably going to have the same Venus sign as your peers. So you're going to mirror back, that kind of Venus energy, or, other aspects as well, like your North Node, South Node, your Saturn sits in there for a while, things like that. So you're going to have similarities in your little small age bubble or your generation. But when you branch out to people who are older and younger than you, their ways of showing and expressing love, or what they believe is attractive, is going to be different. So yeah, and then Venus is our love language, like affirmations, physical touch, gifts, acts of service, quality time. And Venus can be like a projection mirror, which all of us tend to be a projection of each other in our shadow self, our unconscious self. When people say, oh, I'm working on my shadow, that is no longer a shadow. You're conscious of what that is, so you can now work on it. Shadow is something that is like almost in the 12th house. The lights are off. It's not easily accessible. You're not aware of it. So if you're not aware of it, how can you consciously work on it? It's unconscious. Okay. Kind of going off onto another segment. This intro is going to be really long. So Venus can be like the economics of love, how we exchange energy, time, money, and attention in relationships. So maybe it starts off really good in the beginning, but over time, if you don't work on it, if you don't water the area that you want it to grow like a plant, or nurturing like a cute little puppy. I'm about to get another puppy. So cute. If you don't, nurture, the relationship or whatever, it's going to die. Like the living plant, if you don't water it, it's going to freaking die. You have to kind of always tend to it. And if you're not ready to do that, you're still working on yourself, it might not be the best time to get into a serious relationship. And hopefully, if you want a non-serious relationship, that you communicate that to the other person, because that's bad karma, okay? Venus is also like a boundary setter, because it's your value. It's like, I will not tolerate that, and I'm going to communicate that to you when it feels hurtful, or you're overstepping, someone's overstepping, almost like sexual harassment or rape, or anything like that. That like, no, you're not allowed to do that. I don't trust you. I don't know you. Well, you don't just have access to me because you bought me a coffee and now you get access to my body. Does that value add up? That doesn't make any sense, right? But there are people out there who is like, well, I bought you a meal, so, you should put out. You're like, no, so no matter what the belief systems are, there are boundaries, and some people don't know how to communicate their boundaries firmly. And there are people who do not listen and hear the other person when they're speaking their boundaries. They're like, oh no, they didn't mean it like that. They're just playing hard to get, and that's when things get really complicated, blurry, toxic, and you're diving into a really bad situation for all parties. Venus also shows how we feel desired, everybody, some people will love it if you give gifts and being spoiled, and some people will be like, I really don't care, like it's just a lot of stuff, and they don't care about material stuff. They care about quality time and learning from each other or doing other types of things. Venus is not just love, it's diplomacy. So it's like, how do you reciprocate, negotiate, compromise, and balance the needs of the people who are involved? Venus is our attraction field. I already mentioned this with like what you tend to attract. Venus is the shadow side of, like the shadow side of Venus can be vanity, entitlement, manipulation in love in order to get what we want, or using charm kind of as a weapon. You can even do, people do that even in non-romantic relationships. They do that in business, marketing, in order to like lure a person into buying their product, or choosing their service or company, like, oh, blah blah blah, or how they word things, to kind of make things blurry, or kind of woo someone in order to spend their money. It's that, positive or negative, it really depends on the person. Venus can be like a glue that keeps people together in a positive or a negative way. That is beyond passion. It's shared tastes, values, humor, lifestyles. And if the persons were not authentic in the beginning, they kind of lied, or just like, oh yeah, I can do that, but in the long run, they hate it, or they want to roll their eyeballs, like, oh, again, then why did you say that you liked it, in the beginning, so you could just get the person, but you don't like it. Just say like, it's okay, like I don't mind, doing that activity or whatever, going with you to that, but it's not something that I want to do all the time, just verbalize it, and hopefully the other person is respectful enough to understand, and you work it out. It's not like, but that's not fair. If you love me, you should always do what I want, otherwise you don't love me enough, like that. That's not very loving, actually. That's like controlling. Venus and the body, Venus kind of also shows what kind of aura, physical body type, personality that the person kind of gives off, even though they are not that actual zodiac sign that you like, or just like the energy of it, maybe like a hint of what that person's Venus type they are drawn to, as well as in a synastry chart. Where are all these planets, entering in the other person's houses? It's kind of create, this like, what kind of energy are the two encountering together? So as a cultural change, lessons that Venus can teach us is like shifting from transaction type of relationships into reciprocity, blah, you know what I'm talking about. So like dating apps out there, the online dating may have made it a little bit more transactional. You read the short pamphlet and the little picture, of the person that you want to swipe, and if they don't match all these things, the height, the type of job title, blah, 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 then it's a no. You're going to bypass them instead of letting things naturally flow organically, whatever works for you. Because I know it's not as easy to meet new people out there, as in the old times, even though I'm not that kind of old. But yeah, it's, shifting our mentality of how strict are we getting, or how unrealistic are we really, when doing that. We might be omitting people in the beginning, or trusting what they put on the front page. But when it comes to their behaviors, follow through, how they communicate, you don't really see that, on that page, so then it'll just delete it, and then people get sick of it over time. Rediscover courtship, slowing down, savoring connection, not giving yourself away so quickly, putting yourself out and open, creating that tension that like you can't have easy access to this person so fast, kind of makes them maybe want to work harder for you if they're serious. And if they're not that serious, then that's already an answer. Or if they're not willing to respect, your boundaries or what hurts you and all that stuff, that's already an answer. Just leave it be. Like they've already omitted themselves if they, cross themselves off of your value system of yourself and what you believe in. So you can kind of, work with that based on your own personal value system. Value self-worth. So, in a cultural way, we should learn to value ourselves more first, instead of just kind of putting yourself last in order to desperately seek a relationship. If you don't have strong self-worth, self-esteem, and self-value, you're more likely to put yourself lower on your list and put someone higher who you don't even know, or give them excuses and allow them to take advantage of you. And when you do that in the beginning, you've already taught them how to treat you, and they're going to keep doing it because you didn't seem to have a problem with it earlier on. So, okay. So, learning to value yourself first, really knowing what hurts you, what you really don't mind, and that is being connected with yourself, your feelings, your emotions, because you can't really say what hurts one person hurts another, and being like a free-spirited floater that changes partners every day, be like, really doesn't bother me. Like if they feel a connection, they're just going to go with it. And when the connection kind of fades and it dies, then they don't have a strong emotional attachment and they can move on. It doesn't hurt them. But to the receiver, that can be extremely painful and hurtful, and they don't operate that way. They, are devoted to one person. They want to work on it, grow, and hold on to it for like forever. And being left out in the cold, ghosted, stonewalled, gaslighted, whatever the vocabulary word that's not nice is thrown in there, that can really devastate that person. So communication in the beginning and being realistic with how you approach this in the beginning is preventing unnecessary heartbreak earlier rather than later, when you're emotionally attached, especially females who get more emotionally attached faster. Culturally, like normalizing pleasure in healthy ways, so stronger boundaries, stronger self-control. If you're a male, practicing celibacy or self-control actually makes you a better performer in the bedroom, just so you know, because you were able to hold yourself for a longer period of time, so you can make the bedroom pleasures longer instead of, oh, I'm done. That lasted like 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and your female partner, if you are, what is the word? Male and female partnered up, she's gonna be like, what? That's it? So it's not going to be as enjoyable for her. And then you're like, well, I'm done. I already did the thing. So when you practice self-control and you're not watching porn all the time, stimulating yourself in that way, you're learning self-control. You can go out in society and being around a lot of really attractive people, and you can still control yourself. Then you're able to perform even better for your real lover, who's going to devote their whole life to you and actually make your life better. instead of running away from them or seeking attention and validation from other people who is not that person. And then the relationship starts going down. And it's like, well, what happened? You were lovey-dovey with each other in the beginning. What happened? You no longer worked on it. That's what happened. You abandoned the relationship, and then you created distance and a toxic relationship and hurt. And now this, if we were talking about women, you cheated on her or whatever, of course she's gonna now go off and heal, become more of an independent woman, go buy a house on her own, go do all these things, on her own. That's why we see this cultural shift of very empowered women who can do everything. So it makes men feel like, well, what am I good for now? So men have to kind of catch up and kind of reorganize what they're doing or what they're not doing that is kind of putting them in this cycle of, self-defeat, because the women want you, okay? They want a protector and they want a provider, At the end of the day, I believe that women do want a provider. They want to provide for themselves, probably out of safety, because if the man ends up abandoning them and they're left with the kid or whatever, and they have to really rely on the baby daddy for child support, and they start doing all kinds of manipulative stuff to avoid paying child support, the woman, she has to keep feeding the kids, or she wants to take care of herself and stuff. And so you see a rise in independent women and men just kind of plateauing, So there's this kind of, we need to reorganize the culture of how relationships work, and that will take time, but hopefully it can progress in a positive way. Let's see. Venus culture can celebrate diverse love styles. So like the 12 zodiac signs, there's like 12 love languages in this aspect, not just one. So just understanding that not everybody loves the same way that you do. And if you want to be with someone else, if you want a companionship for life, a best friend for life that you can share and grow and do the bedroom deeds with, more easily accessibly, then, you have to learn the other person's love language, otherwise don't be in a relationship, get a pet parrot or something like that. Way easier. Reframe beauty standards. How we see beauty, not everyone sees beauty as the influencer online who has a certain kind of look, certain kind of body, surgery, and all this stuff, or certain kind of dress style. Sometimes people see that's like, okay, that's nice, but I want beauty is even deeper than that, beyond the surface part. And that's going to be different for everyone. And then culturally with Venus, how do we honor relationships as an art form? Because it always changes. It's like art, it's not, relationships are not an Excel spreadsheet, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. And it's that simple. It's just not, it's harder. Same when I train clients with personal training in the gym. When somebody does a squat, if I have 10 people doing a squat in the beginner's level, sure, they're doing a squat, but they're all doing a squat kind of differently. And I have to make adjustments of why do they feel it like this? Why do they feel pain here? What is a weak point? Why are their knees buckling in? They're rolling on their toes instead of on the back half and outside portions of their feet. They're leaning too far forward. Their abs are weak. That's why they do that, even though they try so hard. There are other things that we have to work on in order to get that squat to be more efficient and effective to add weight, So everyone does things a little bit differently, and sometimes it's not the person's fault. That is the way it is right now based on whatever happened to them in the past, or they learned incorrectly, or they didn't think of it that way. They didn't think of it that deeply because it's just a squat. It's like, come on, but there's way more to it, and so it's just like, how do we broaden our brain and belief systems of relationships are like an art, and that is very hard because everyone is different, so it's really hard, and it can be kind of scary to work with someone else because people are afraid of rejection. They want to be liked and all this stuff. Not everyone has looks going for them. Some people are not everyone is funny or charming. Not everyone has the words to entertain or express themselves. It's just everyone has their own struggles. That's why knowing your Chiron and your Saturn placement are really important. Knowing your ascendant sign, which, puts the order of your whole chart in order, or blah, blah, is, it helps. All these things can help you understand yourself a little bit better. Encouraging vulnerability as a culture, because if you're able to express yourself without the fear of rejection or being ridiculed, bullied, embarrassed, publicly humiliated, all this stuff, if you have the courage and bravery to learn to do that, even if it's like a little bit at a time, because it doesn't feel secure. It feels very nerve-wracking, and, you want to protect your ego of like, I'm the best, and I'm not going to show the negative sides of myself because I don't want this person that I like to know all the bad stuff about myself, because that will turn the person off, and yeah, that's valid, but if you're more authentic, you are going to you're going to receive a person who is going to understand and be more compassionate and work with you if that is what they're willing to do, or they'll also expose themselves and be like, you're a piece of shit, that's not what I want. And thank God you found that out in the beginning instead of later, and so like they're right now telling you how they behave, how emotionally stable they are, how they're going to treat you, or what their beliefs are. And if that makes you feel bad, makes you feel lower, that might not be the most supportive partner to get stuck with, at least not at this phase of life that you're in, because I don't know how old you are, and hopefully you grow and evolve. But if you have someone kind of putting you down like that all the time, making you feel like shit about yourself, you are less likely to grow, get better, and evolve with someone breathing fire down your neck, and depending how they do it, because sometimes you need, constructive criticism, which doesn't feel good, in order to grow. But if the person authentically cares about you, like the intentions are true and loving, and it's like, I'm saying that not to be mean to you, I'm saying it because I care. And I don't think you're quite aware of it, but you're doing this again, and if it's something that you want to work on, you're like, yeah, I do that. Like, do you want it to be better, or this is something you're not ready for right now? Like, you're not in the mood, the mindset, a lot of crap is happening in your life right now to add another thing of suckiness to your life. Maybe it's not the right time, and that person is going to show you who they are in the beginning. And so, it can be like, oh, wow, like, I'm glad I opened up and expressed something vulnerable, because I wouldn't have known that this person is going to actually have my back, you know, and help me as a person, you know, like your growth partner for life, your best friend, your companion, someone that you can come home to when you don't trust the other people out there in the scary world. But this person is going to we're going to kind of understand, as long as you are also willing to work on the relationship and be honest. Are you actually going to work on your flaws and whatever? Because if you don't work on your part, if you keep making excuses over and over again, if you don't change the way that you're communicating to your partner that you want to change, and it keeps dragging on and on and on, that other person who is so supportive and patient for you, they're eventually going to leave you because, you know, it's starting to be a drag or become really draining. It's putting them down. It's making them change who they used to be, and they used to love themselves. And now you brought them lower, you know, in order to match your level of self-esteem and self-worth, instead of you trying to rise up to their standard of self-worth and self-esteem, you know, and being patient enough for you to get there. And they had to come down to kind of help you keep coming up, you know, while they still maintain and hopefully still also grow. So it's like a dance or a balance of the two. And that's going to determine, is the relationship going to work in the long run or not, you know? So, and no one can really determine that besides the two people in the relationship. Even if you go outside of the relationship to ask for advice, make sure you talk to the actual person that you're in the relationship, what's going on, not all these other people who have no idea what's really going on or how the other person feels in your relationship on how you need to approach the relationship. You need to just talk to the person you're in the relationship with, because that is just insane. Venus in a cultural change way, integrate money and love with awareness, because Venus rules money, and we know a lot of couples, they fight about money all the time. How do you spend money? When you make a big purchase, do you communicate and talk to each other about it? Or you're like, I'm the one who made the money, so I don't care about what you think or whatever. We're going to buy the couch like this, or we're going to decorate the house my way because that's the way I want it to be. That's not very loving. You have to coexist with someone else who has to also enjoy the environment. You have to come to an agreement. And what your value is on a house, if you are going to buy a house, you know, what size, how big or small, is it realistic? Does that leave room for your lifestyle, travel, education, activities, entertainment, or are you going to be house broke? You know, how do you allocate, you know, extra savings? You know, what makes you both feel safe and secure? Does anyone have spending habits, shopaholism, gambling, addictions that will take away from the home team, so to say, because eventually that's going to hurt the partner, you know? And if you're not honest, you get like sneaky behavior. Someone opens a new credit card under their name to, you know, hide statements from the other. Yeah. Or participating in like wild exchange clubs when they never told you that after like being married for 10 years, and it's like a huge surprise, and you trusted the person the entire time, and this was a huge slap in the face. Or you allocated money to your kids' college funds, and after 20 years of being married, you never even thought to check all the time, and you just trusted, because why would you be in a relationship that you don't trust? And you realize that all. Okay, Venus in a Capricorn. So if you actually watch that first intro section, which the intro is like 1 hour long, bless your soul, because I know it's really long and I kind of run on and on and on and on and on and on. So that's why there's timestamps down below. And always also check your house placement as well. If this doesn't quite hit it for you, or it doesn't resonate completely with you, then also check your house placement. Because even though technically it's like, oh, check the sign that your planet or whatever is in, but in the house is where it's actually playing out. I have personally found that it can interchange pretty easily. It doesn't have to just be like, oh, your Venus is in Capricorn, but it is playing out in your area of the sixth house or whatever. It can take on the energies of both. So people who have Venus in Capricorn kind of tend to love very kind of slowly, cautiously. It's more kind of reserved, and seeing if the individual is actually kind of, it's going to work for the long haul. Anything dealing with Capricorn is usually long-term investments, usually not short-term. That doesn't necessarily mean that you will never or not are not interested in short-term flings or anything like that. You have to look at the entire chart, like maybe you have a moon in Aries, so you go through relationships kind of fast, or depending on where your moon is or what sign, that can kind of take away or add to this Venus placement, and so that's why you have to look at your entire chart. And of course, never, I don't know, always kind of be open-minded to interpretations and other people's perspectives, but nobody can actually tell you what's going on with your own life. It's your life, and nobody actually feels that except for you. So Venus in Capricorn is also just slow, reserved, methodical, plans for the long term. Usually like someone who's a little bit more mature, grounded, comes off as very stable, maybe emotionally stable, not all over the place or going through ups and downs in life. Or, that doesn't mean everybody goes through ups and downs in life. But, like can kind of take a lot of burden and responsibility, I guess. So this way they come off as more grounded, stable, sturdy emotionally, instead of, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Like kind of wailing and crying, and, which can create more anxiety in, whichever person. If like, oh my God, like if you don't have it together, I know that I don't have it together. So one of us needs to have it together. So this way we don't fall apart or whatever. So that's kind of what I'm trying to say, I guess. So Venus in Capricorn is, okay, my mic cut out on the rest of my video and I kept talking. So I'm going to try and regurgitate all the things that I said. Venus in Capricorn, you may like ambitious people, or have something that, people who have something they're kind of trying to strive for or going for. You don't really necessarily like lazy bums or people who just like, yeah, that's fine, that's okay. They're just doing the daily thing, going to work, just living the daily life. That might not be as interesting for you, or what you may be seeking, or what you enjoy yourself. You may find that you just really have more passion, or you like being around people who have more ambition, or they're trying to work towards something, they're trying to build something or get better at something in some sort of way. It doesn't have to necessarily be career, it doesn't necessarily have to be money, even though those are kind of Capricorn type things. Materialism, working up a hierarchy, working up some kind of ladder. Doesn't have to be exactly like that, but it can be. That can be pertaining to yourself, because if you're watching this, most likely you have Venus in Capricorn. So you may like, or be more blessed with kind of getting promotions, or having a more pleasant career, or even if you have to work hard at your career or job, you do get a lot of blessings in return from it, or it helps you have a more luxurious life where you can afford nice things. That's a very Capricorn thing as well. You work hard, you play hard kind of thing, but you worked very hard for it. That's a very Capricorn in a way. You may be, you're interested in more mature partners, or doesn't have to necessarily be older, although that can be, but they're just more emotionally mature and grounded. As what kind of you're looking for, because that's going to help build a more stable foundation, and it's going to last longer, opposed to in contrast, relationships where communication, there's like covert control dynamics, or like silent treatment. One person shuts down and runs away until the other person kind of gives into them, or having a belief system of like, oh, if the person chases after me, even though I treat them poorly, or I ghost them, or don't communicate, or don't express myself, whatever the excuses that can pile up. If the person chases after me, regardless of my poor behavior, that means they love me, or they really care. Venus and Capricorn individual may not, find that attractive, or Capricorn energy in general, because that is kind of more immature, or someone who's not quite healed yet, or hasn't gone through enough life to kind of overcome those things. If they haven't had the years to kind of practice or outgrow certain things, characteristics that aren't really working for them, but against them. So you may be drawn to people who, have that kind of Capricorn type vibe, grounded, mature, stable, kind of like a mature parent, regardless if you had a mature parent growing up or not. Someone who just seems like they're going to be there, they're like your rock, regardless of good or bad times, or maybe they're not the most entertaining person on the planet. A lot of Capricorns in general, they don't have to be at the look at your entire chart, but what actually works, how you climb up to the top and stuff, is doing the really mundane, boring, dull, hard work, and nobody usually sees those type of things. So you may really admire and like people who have that, within their character, or you yourself have that as well. So if you have that, you want someone who kind of matches you on your level, otherwise they're gonna kind of bring you down or hold you back, and then you might be frustrated and like, really like this person, but be careful of falling in love with the potential, instead of what's actually there. And maybe that is a lesson that you had to overcome or grow into, because anything relating to Capricorn there's a lot of freaking lessons with Capricorn. Therefore, there's a lot of delays in actually getting what you want, so that is a possibility within yourself or with a person that you are attracted to. That is something that they had to go through, and that's why you like them, because they had to go through a lot of BS and crap, and they still overcame and came out on top, or the way they went about it was very mature and responsible, and you like that characteristic in that individual, opposed to someone who the way they reacted or responded to a situation was like, oh God, really? Like, that's like really irresponsible, or really stupid, or reckless, or whatever. That's going to be unattractive to someone who has this kind of Capricorn energy. So those are possibilities. Doesn't have to be. Of course, you have to look at your entire chart, because sometimes it adds to or takes away depending on what other things are going on, and also what developmental stage in life you are in, and so, you might grow into your Venus, I guess, because freaking Capricorn. Capricorn is so slow. So that can be that, and, as I think I said before it got cut off, check out your house placement as well, because if this doesn't quite resonate with you, you might resonate a little bit more with the house placement sign. So like if you had Venus in the first house, in Capricorn, so if most likely you're Capricorn rising, you might not be Capricorn rising and Venus is still in Capricorn in your first house. Therefore, you'd probably be a Sagittarius rising. I think. Then, what was I going to say? I forgot. Then you might like people who take you seriously. They don't play with your heart. There's a responsibility with you, yourself, your physical body, and who you are, who you're wanting to become. You appreciate people who, are mature enough to allow you to be who you are and not like fool around with it, I guess. And someone who might have Venus in Capricorn in like the 5th house, it's the house of Leo usually. So check out Venus in Leo, or Leo in general, and most likely if you're Venus in Capricorn in Leo, if you're at the early degrees of every house thing, if your houses are even, because not everyone's houses are even and such like that, you're most likely a Virgo rising, maybe a Leo rising, but probably a Virgo rising. Then you like dating partners who are very responsible, or they have a really good job. You don't want a loser or anything like that. Or maybe the creative, it doesn't have to be, of course, or like the fun things that you believe are fun is like going to a museum or a history museum, or, like a talk somewhere, some kind of famous talk, like spokesperson or influencer, like a motivator or something, like a TED talk or something like that is fun for you because there's some kind of growth there, or you go together for those type of things, like gatherings where you can learn and build, or money marketing or something like that. It might not necessarily be clubbing or anything like that. And that doesn't mean that you don't do that. It doesn't omit that you enjoy dancing or all these other things that can come off as superficial and lighthearted. It just means that, there is some kind of quality to you that is just more mature when it comes to your kind of creative side, or how you express yourself, or what you do for fun. There's some kind of maturity to it. And that also depends on how old you are and what you've kind of outgrown. Instead of going dancing at the club, grinding with a stranger, maybe you like to go to a lounge, and drink whiskey and have a really mature conversation about whatever it is you're interested in, instead of making out with some random person on the dance floor and taking them home or something like that. That's not part of your character. So kind of always take these things into kind of perspective, because it is impossible for me to come up with every possible scenario that is happening in your life, because it's your life and not mine. I feel like I always have to regurgitate that, because there's always going to be people who like to project, or I find it even funny, the people who make a comment saying that they're trying to kind of correct or put on their 2 cents. Like, not necessarily that saying that I'm wrong, but trying to express what their correction is to what I was saying, and then what they just expressed is like, that is exactly what I was trying to say. Like, did I not come across clear enough, or maybe the vocabulary words I used didn't quite translate into how you could comprehend and understand what I was trying to say, so I always feel like I have to kind of over explain sometimes, because giving the short explanations, people just kind of take it on, and then they kind of do with it as they will, which you can, because this is kind of like art. Words, expressions, perspectives is like, it's, how I may interpret it and then translate it into words. You may receive the words that I'm providing to you, and you're going to shape and shift them into what makes sense to you based on your worldview experience, and therefore that is kind of like a weird art that nobody really gets to see, and you don't kind of understand that's what's actually happening. Life is a piece of art. So I don't know if that is everything that got cut off in the previous video, because I kept going. But yeah, Venus in Capricorn can be materialism. It does not have to be. It can be luxurious goods, like brand name things that usually hold value money-wise, not like buying a purse at Kmart or Walmart or whatever. Usually, if you do that, there's nothing wrong with that. But usually you just have to, and you end up donating it or giving it away. It's very much harder to resell stuff like that at a high price, like in comparison to like a Chanel bag or something like that. Usually you can still sell it, even if it's not the price that you bought it for, so that is kind of a Capricorn theme, like what is going to hold value or grow in value. So Venus rules a lot of things. If you watch the full freaking hour of the intro version, intro to the Venus things of like what we tend to attract. So Venus in Capricorn, you can tend to attract like hard work. Maybe not, or like maybe it is hard work, but you get paid really well, therefore you can afford luxurious brands, or cars or houses, or a lot of Botox on your face, I don't know, or getting your hair done like more often than the poor person, but it doesn't have to be that way. You can be like middle income and your interests are just like working hard, someone who's responsible, dedicated, loyal, who's grounded, who's going to be your rock. Even when times get hard, you're like, oh, I fell out of love with you, or, oh, I don't know about this relationship anymore, even though you've been together for like 20 years, you're, like, they're still going to be there, because that is a Capricorn energy. Even if you get tired, it's not as fun. The building phase, the growing phase, the dating phase, the honeymoon phase kind of has died off and withered away. You're still there, like that is someone that a Venus and Capricorn person, I would think, would be attracted to, or who ends up choosing, if you believe in marriage, or having a baby, growing a family, you would probably move towards someone who has those characteristics, because that is how you're going to have a sturdy foundation. And that doesn't mean that things don't happen or things don't play out the way you hoped, or you perceived someone to be this way and they totally bamboozled you, and maybe the transits happened, and Neptune is no longer in Pisces. It's moved into Aries, which it's soon to be, officially, once I when I'm making this video in December 2025. It moves into Aries officially, I think the end of January 2026. So it's like, oh, after 14 years, things changed, you know, in this person, or, you know, you don't, that blurriness that Neptune, you know, glazed over someone, like you see through the fog and, you know, you see clearly a little bit more. And now things are not what they used to be, you know, and that is just a growth that whatever is happening, you're having to navigate through, regardless if it's good or bad. So, but I always perceive if it is perceived to be bad, if you learn a lesson from it and you grow from it, you know, even though it sucks and it hurts and it's not what you wanted, it's sometimes it's a good thing. And sometimes it's the best thing that you ever could have wished for, because then you would have spent the rest of your life in denial or not actually going for the things that you want, because you kept holding yourself back, because you kept choosing something that wasn't working anymore or whatever, trying to fight or morph or control someone or some situation or whatever that is, that is no longer working, you know. And what is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting the same results, you know. And so part of that Capricorn energy is, even though you might have stayed in something negative too long because you are loyal and you are that rock, or you're that, you know, the responsible person who takes on a lot of burdens, and, you know, you're emotionally strong, like a quiet strength, and no one seems to get it, and you just bury your emotions because shit always happens to you, because that's Capricorn energy. I'm a Sun, Mercury, and Neptune in Capricorn in my 4th house, and that is like a life theme, especially if you also have Venus in Scorpio and Pluto in Scorpio in the 2nd house of self-worth and self-esteem. Yeah, you go through a lot of these types of crap, bullshit, growth spurts. So take it from me. You know, sometimes it is, if that is happening to you, I'm not going to assume that it is, but usually people who seek out astrology usually are going through a hard time, or they're just trying to seek out something that is more mysterious and beyond what you can just get in a book, you know. You're trying to feel heard. You're trying to make sense of the shit that's happening in your life, and you don't know why, even though you keep working and trying hard. And Betty over there, like, hardly does anything, and they get, you know, a more rewarding, easy life. And like, what the hell is that, you know? So that could possibly be a theme for you, you know, having this kind of Capricorn energy in there. You know, it's like making a very responsible Venus sign, you know, or making work very harmonious, making money and getting promotions and stuff very harmonious for you. Maybe it kind of lightens up that Saturnian placement, you know, where things would be extra burden, extra heavy, extra hard. Perhaps it's a little bit more harmonious and lighter because it's pleasant. Venus makes things more pleasant. I have to say, lucky for you. If you know that is you, it doesn't mean that it was easy. But Pluto transiting Capricorn for the past 15 years or so, in the past, you know, and that had to have crossed your Venus sign. And I'm sure that was kind of like, you know, like felt like dying, you know, or something that you love, or it made it very non-harmonious, you know, for a period of time. So that is very possible. So it really depends on where your life went, or what lessons you know, are meant to learn. And if you did learn those lessons and have evolved, how are you going to take it with yourself into the future, depending on where it is in your life. What lessons have you learned in order to give back, or take on for your growth and such, things like that. So if you're interested in what I kind of ranted about towards the end, maybe you're interested in my book. It's called Trigger to Change. It's linked down below. It's available on Amazon. It's available like in Europe and stuff like that, and probably any English speaking country, Canada, United States, Europe, maybe Australia. So it should be, or, just try it, I guess, and see if it pops up on your Amazon, if you have Amazon wherever you are. You probably will enjoy it. And I probably write better than I speak, because I do have Chiron and Gemini in my 9th house. So where you suck at, you are also blessed. In a weird way. It's just same but different. I don't know if that made any sense, but check out my other playlist. I highly recommend your rising sign. That one's long for all of them because I actually go through every single house, unlike just simply the rising signs. I kind of dissect it a little bit more, so it tends to be longer. So sorry for people who do not like long ass videos, but that's just the way it is. Otherwise, just find someone else to watch. I also highly recommend your Chiron placement. Don't forget not only the zodiac sign, but the house placement. And your Saturn sign, every 30 years you hit your Saturn return. It's like a big final exam, that you didn't want to enter. And, that, in correlation, or, it kind of can connect to other things that's not directly that Saturn placement, but what happened during that time. And hopefully you learned that lesson if you're past that. And if you're entering the age of 27, 28, you might just be entering it. That doesn't mean like, oh, it's, it's conjunct, and so you've learned it, no, it might surprise you a little bit later because Saturn is delayed, so you might just be entering the exam and you have no idea that you're entering the exam. And then you'll come out of it like they say age 30, but for me, it's like I felt like I died when I was 33, just like Jesus, and that was the biggest yet best lesson of my entire life. And that is kind of in the book, that story. And so you can learn lessons from other people, such as myself, to pre-prepare, or if you like just real life lessons, a variety of them, you might be interested in my book. So your Saturn placement, as well as your North Node, South Node. That is also very important, of where you're coming from and where you're kind of headed, or what you're wanting to head towards. So those are the most important ones that I do highly recommend you watch, just in general for your own self-growth and self-awareness, I know when I first kind of really investigating astrology, I've always been interested in astrology, palm reading, tarot, because I'm half Thai, and so I've been to Thailand many, many times, and I've seen psychics and things like that, and like I'm really surprised, like, what? And they speak a different language than me. I unfortunately don't speak Thai. Yes, Chiron and Gemini in the 9th house. If you know, I just suck. Or the life situations for me, it just didn't happen. I always felt like excluded all the time, but that's too long of a story. I was always just kind of put aside, and I just had to sit there patiently, and I'm a good listener, so I can read body language and things like that, or kind of guess, summarize what people are saying, but that doesn't mean that I actually know the vocabulary words. So I forgot what I was going to say. So yeah, check out those videos, most important for self-growth, self-awareness. Oh yeah, when I first entered astrology or investigating it more, a lot of it because I watched a lot of other people's YouTube videos because that's just the way I like to learn more so than reading. I did read blogs and all that stuff. But some of it was like, yeah, not really, or whatever, didn't quite hit the nail on the head. And some are like, yeah, that's very true. I felt very heard, especially the Chiron stuff. Um, and some are like, no, that's not me. Like, I'm not like that, and having a lot of pride and ego with whatever your belief system is holding on to. And then after listening more, we're kind of trying to relax and open up into the ideas of various perspectives. Kind of know it's not personal because these people are not talking directly to me. They don't know me. And so opening up and, sometimes it would click a little bit later, like a few days, few weeks later, and I would rewatch and re-listen and try to really hear it, and I was like, oh, I am like that. I'm like, I don't like it. Because you don't want people calling out what you suck at, because you already know. You usually know what you suck at, and it's like, man, I am like that. And someone noticed. That's not fun, you know? Or maybe you just didn't know and like, oh shit, like I am like that. Like I didn't see it like that before, and it makes you more aware. And so it kind of helps with you not taking things as personally, or you try to work on it, even though if you've been a certain way for like your entire life, or you have been working on it, sometimes you're the only one that needs to know, because maybe it takes your entire life to grow out of something or unlearn something or become better at something, and no one sees that you're trying, because it's very Capricorn. No one sees the hard work that you're actually doing behind things. People just expect you to be perfect, all the time. Or it's just like, if you're going to bother even trying, it needs to be perfect. Otherwise, don't even bother trying, which that doesn't make any sense. You have to keep trying and trying and trying and failing and trying and reworking and reorganizing and redoing things and practicing and practicing and practicing, because it's just not natural, or you suck at it, or you haven't made it to where you want to be. So those are all Capricornian kind of things. And so if you like that type of stuff, if you are a Venus and Capricorn individual, yeah, just keep trying, keep working, keep evolving, and you are a resilient being. I have to say that with all Capricorn people, because people don't take Capricorns, or give enough credit, I feel like, because you just don't see what's actually happening, or what they always have to go through, and what they're holding on to, or keeping everything afloat, so that's very Capricorn. They just see, oh, they're so great, or their life is so easy, they're so rich, they're fine, leave them alone, which is not always the case. So hope you enjoyed this video. This portion was 30 minutes long. Hopefully that's just enough. Please like and subscribe and share it to someone that you think that would benefit from this video. So yeah, catch you later. Bye.